Thank you, Janet. I'm excited to be here. I've been on this journey with this company for the past 10 plus years, and a huge element of all of the things that I'm going to share today I'm giving a lot of credit to the Best and Brightest program for getting me to start to think differently along with all of our people. So just to kind of begin, this journey has been so incredible, and so many people have asked about it that we ended up writing a book because we literally couldn't get our core business done because we had executive groups coming in and sharing, their struggles, and then we were inspiring them with all these different things that we've done over the past 10 years. And so this book, Become Unmistakable, and the subtitle is really important. Start your journey from commodity to oddity. It was us realizing that, really we're just your standard contractor, basically a general contractor, construction manager. We work nationally. We've got about 200 employees. We do about $300 million a year overall from a regional and national perspective. And we did not stand out from the rest of the world of contractors. So this goal that we set many years ago is, how do we stand out? How do we get to a point where we are an oddity? We are not hired for price. We have people pounding on our doors wanting to work here. We have clients that call us and ask us to do their work. We've been able to abandon sales staff. We don't have a sales staff today. We have just all these incredible things that I'm going to share about the way that we've showed up as leaders, the way that we've addressed our employee base, the way that we've addressed the outside world, similarly to how we've made this employee-centric culture. So I want to begin with a little bit of a story, and this is a story back in the 70s. I was probably 10 or 12 years old, and I remember laying on the shag carpet floor in the living room of my grandmother's house on Easter Sunday, and this movie would come on every year, and we would all gather around, and this movie is very familiar to probably everybody on the call, but The Wizard of Oz. And in this movie, you've got this gal in this black and white Dust Bowl of Kansas world who's sitting there singing, looking up at the sky, singing this Somewhere Over the Rainbow. She's longing for something more special. She just is unhappy. She recently had her dog taken away, and she's trying to find her way in life, but she knows that she's not happy here. And so as she's singing along, she decides to run away from home. That doesn't work out. She comes back. There's this huge twister, and it rips the house from the ground, and it's spinning around in the air, and you hear all these noises and the whirlwinds and all these things, and she looks out the window and she sees the precursor to the Wicked Witch and Mrs. Gulch and all these things, and all of a sudden the house is spinning, and then it stops. It hits the ground. All the noise, everything, it's just a completely silent movie at this point, and she slowly walks up to the door, grabs the knob, turns it and opens it up, and she has this experience, and it's the first Technicolor scene in the movie of The Wizard of Oz. And she has now transported herself from this real world of agony of black and white to this colorful, interesting trip and journey she's about to take. And I look at that movie, and I was fascinated by it. I was scared by the monkeys and the talking apple trees and these characters that she meets along the way. But as an adult, I latched onto this movie in a much different way, and I said, what if most of our employees in a lot of companies are coming to work in the black and white Dust Bowl of Kansas, singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, there's got to be a better place? What if the front door to our offices was like that door in Dorothy's house, where you turn the knob, walk into this employer, and it's the colorful, wonderful, world, this journey to the Emerald City with this cast of really crazy characters? What if that is what a company is like? And the reality is, the first thing that people meet in some of these companies that are this black and white world of Kansas are these horrible bosses. And I showed a couple on the screen here, whether it's the old Tony Soprano, don't do what I like, I'll whack you. Some of these other people, you've watched the movies, you understand, they're just kind of jerks. They don't really get it. They don't show up to lead in the way that most people desire. They are very, sometimes arrogant, prideful, egocentric people who are there for the shareholder value, for the maximizing profits at the expense of whomever. And so what we realized is, did we have the right leadership in our company in the first place? And really, we got into this point where we said, this colorful world of Oz versus this black and white world of Kansas is very much like the way the human brain works. So you've got this left brain, this logical side of us who we're very familiar with. They're the ones that show up in board meetings. They're the ones that talk about production schedules. They're the ones that evaluate profitability and things like that. And then you've got this right side. And I would say that the right side tends to be this HR director who has the feeling side. It's the mom or dad of the company who can sit down and have meaningful conversations with employees and connect with them. And if the left brain could be asked to describe itself, what would it call itself? And so here's what I would make up that the left brain would say. Left brain would say, hey, I'm a scientist, I'm a mathematician, I really like familiar things. I'm all about categorizing, accuracy, I'm linear, I like to be analytical and strategic. I'm a master of words and language, I calculate equations, I love to play with numbers, I am order, I'm logic. That's me, I'm the left brain. And I often, when I'm doing this presentation to an audience, I'll ask people to raise their hand if that really expresses who they are when they come to work. And it's amazing. It's usually 75% or higher people will identify as a left brain leader. And then I go back to the right brain. I say, if this colorful right brain could describe what it stands for and how it thinks, what would it say? And so I believe the right brain would say, I'm this creative part of you. I'm a free spirit. I'm passion. I'm yearning. I'm the sensuality of the world around me. I love roaring laughter. I'm taste. I'm the feeling of sand beneath my bare feet. I'm movement. I'm vivid colors. I'm the thing that wants to paint on this empty canvas. I'm boundless imagination. I love art and poetry. I sense. I feel. That's the element of this right brain that I think many leaders cannot tap into. And I can tell you that our employees show up much differently when they're led by somebody who has got more right brain initiative than left. I mean, you can imagine how much different that is. So I challenge people that today they do have a toggle switch. They can choose. They can click back and forth from right to left brain. So do they want to live in this black and white dust bowl of Oz? Do they want to create, it's all about the analytics, it's all about the details of what I need from you, or is it about the right brain leader who comes in and says, I want to create a space that is full of energy, that is full of passion, that is full of relationships, that is full of people going the extra mile to do their job in a way that nobody else does. And I think that is an important aspect of what we learned as in our leadership group, say 10 years ago, as we began our journey into from a client-centered, client-focused business to an employee-centered core business. So we talk about the journey that we've gone through, and it's not been easy. It really began with this idea that probably like most on the call, we're commodities. There's somebody else doing exactly what we're doing, and people are going to select us based on cost. And that felt horrible to me. I go, I don't want to be that. So can we begin a journey to get out of this commodity mindset and be an oddity? And what does that look like? How do we do that? We get into programs that we created. So the very basic one was our Pleasant Surprise program. It was, let's be creative and let's let our owners know really what it is that we're doing differently for them. Let's surprise them with things that they didn't expect from a contractor and let them know so they felt really good about it. But this is still client-centric focus. But then we kind of moved out and we said, let's go another circle. Let's devise something that we ended up labeling the E&V experience, and it was for our employees. How do they get these pleasant surprises along the way? How do they show up on Monday morning, on Thursday afternoon, a retreat, any number of things, how they're onboarded and are pleasantly surprised? So they get this E&V experience. So the E&V experience was, how do we show up differently for our employees and then how do we show up differently? Do those employees show up differently for the owners, for the paying customers? At that point, we landed on something really powerful, and we said, hey, this feels right. It's really working well, this employee centricity. The way that they are showing up for our clients today is wonderful, but now let's take it to the next level. How do we create a brand of a company that has employees that are worthy of neighbor of the year, husband, father, wife of the year, employee of the year? How do we show up to be community member of the year? These types of ideas of how are we unmistakably showing up differently in all that we do. So we started to wrap our heads around something even broader, this idea of, doing some things that seemed impossible or unthinkable, and developing the individual brand of people that aligned with the brand of our company. This unmistakable, award-worthy people, individuals who are then part of an unmistakable, award-worthy company who's doing these unmistakable things. So the reality is this is not a black and white situation. We live in a continuum that varies from commodity behavior to unthinkable, doing the impossible behavior. And if you look at this screen, it shows this kind of amoeba shape. And I go, in any given day for an individual, or a week for the company, or the year, or a particular job, we're going to vary inside and outside of what is considered commodity contracting to, I can't believe these guys, I want them to do all of our work, this unmistakable E&V. But the reality is today is our people are staying further and further away from this commodity mindset, and they're going closer to this doing the impossible. So how do we go about doing this? And it really began, as I said, a journey from within the walls. How do we show up for our people? How do we bring our right brain leadership into this world of construction? And it began with a realization that our org chart needs to be inverted. And I think this has been around a long time, an inverted org chart, but I think the attitude of the leadership has to change. I have a quote off to the side there. It says, I'm not much, but I'm all I think about. And I have to chuckle because that is, you've got this kind of false sense of humility of, yeah, I'm at the bottom of the pyramid, but the way you're really walking and talking, it isn't the case. So for me, I love this idea of I'm here to service our upper management. Our upper management's here to service our field managers and our tradespeople, but then going one more level, those people, our organization as a general contractor, we only oversee about 10% of a job getting built. The other 90% are our trade partners. And so our organization today exists to support the success of our trade partners who have the biggest impact on owner satisfaction. But if all of our people show up and are there to support our trade partners in a way that's unmistakably different than our competition, our trade partners like to work with us more. They make more money with us. They refer us to more clients. And everything, this whole circle of life continues. And so we've worked really hard at changing the way that we show up. And the first exercise I want to share is something that I learned, an exercise called Lifeline. And so the very first time I did this is a fairly new one, well, it says 2015, but probably a couple of years prior, I did a leadership retreat, and I brought my executive committee. We rented a place, not a hotel. We got a condo. We had our own rooms, but we cooked together. We had an overnight. And in the evening, I asked my executive group to do this Lifeline activity. And basically, you're taking a sheet of paper, say 24 by 36 or 18 by 24, a big sheet of paper, drawing a line right down the center of it. At the far left side of the line, you've got your earliest memory, your earliest age, and in this example, I was 4 years old, all the way to the right side of the drawing of this line, I'm 49 years old. And above the line are all the cool, great, awesome things that have happened in your life. Below the line are all the kind of tragedies, the cancers, the deaths, the divorces, the whatever. And so imagine me sitting in a room with this sheet of paper up as the CEO of our company and sharing who I am as a person very deeply, very meaningfully, my highs and my lows, the good times and the bad times. And, you know, I stopped on things like when I was 13 years old, I witnessed an 11-year-old brother get hit by a car and killed in front of me. And I was able to share the trauma that I went through in my whole life, and how who I am as a leader today has a lot to do with the fact that I've been trying to make up for, in my mind, disappointing my parents because I lost my brother on my watch, and how I had to be the super achiever. And a lot of what I've gotten today was because of that. Now, I spent about 20 minutes going through this lifeline with everybody, and what you don't know is one of the execs was actually one of my younger brothers. 12-year younger brother who was actually born right a year after my brother had died. But this brother of mine, who's known me his whole life, didn't know a good deal of my story. This is my own family. So when I was done sharing this story, my other execs that were in the room said, hey, can we have a minute? Can we have some time to go back into our lifeline and work on this? And I thought, absolutely. What I learned was really important was I took my armor off. I set the level of vulnerability that was going to be expected or assumed to be the case for the rest, and they all realized that they hadn't gone very deep when they first drafted their lifeline. So they spent some time, and then they came up, and they each in turn shared their lifeline. And the incredible learning that I had from that was we cried together, we hugged, we bonded in a way that I had never experienced in business before. When we left there, I never felt ever a worry about one of my people, one of my key leaders leaving my company, because we had such an incredible bond. And so, you know, that was at a higher level. And then we said, you know, how do we go to the next level within the organization? How do we start to create intimate, meaningful connections within our people? How do we create vulnerability? And so we decided to start to do retreats differently. So I'm going to share with you a retreat that I had with our field managers. So we had about 15, you would call them superintendents, project superintendents, we call them field managers. We invited them to an overnight retreat along with my executive committee. So there were about 20 of us at this retreat. Again, we rented a big house actually that slept 20, 25 people. And the intent was, again, don't get a hotel where everybody goes and isolates. Get a place where people are staying up late, people are cooking together, people are waiting in line to get in the shower, whatever it is, creating this memory. And so we asked for these field managers to come in at about 5 o'clock at the end of their day. And when they came in, we started to assign them tasks, kind of group tasks to start the bond. And, you know, one group was putting together the salads, one group was prepping and cooking the steaks, and maybe a potato bar, setting the table, etc. We got done eating and cleaning up the dishes, and we all went outside and we had a big fire. We sat around the fire, we had a couple of drinks, kind of loosened people up, and we had this game called Two Truths and a Lie, which was really a fun game because we got to learn some really interesting things about each other, and then we got to see how creative people are and just how well they could deceive people. So there's a lot of chuckles, but then about 9 o'clock at night is when the magic happened. So imagine we're sitting inside this big house, this living room. We've gathered, you know, every couch, every chair, every dining room chair. They're all sitting in a big circle, and we've got about 20 people now sitting in chairs. And I had prepped them the week before, and I said, I want you each to bring one item of significance that you can share with the group. Something that is really meaningful to you, that tells a story that, for instance, if your house is on fire, you would be heartbroken. You would probably run in and grab it. And so that's the way I teed it up. So here we are at 9 o'clock at night. People are kind of anxious. It's quiet. It's dimly lit. And we ask the first person to share. And this person brings out a photo album. He says, this is a photo album of my daughter who, when she had just gotten her license at 16, had gotten into a horrific car accident. I almost lost her. And he starts to show and hold up the book, kind of like story time in first grade. And he's showing the picture of the mangled car. And then the picture's in ICU with his daughter, black and blue, and in traction, and hoses running in and out of her nose and everything. And he's going through the trauma of getting the call and all the things that is going on. And we're all just sitting there leaning forward, holding this space for him as he shares, and he's breaking down, and he passes this book around. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. I never would have expected this kind of sharing from a bunch of, 40, 50-something-year-old construction workers. Then the second person offers to go, and he says, I brought this pebble, this stone. I'm thinking, oh boy, I hope this is good. And he holds this little stone up. It's probably a 3/4 inch diameter stone, and he says, this is a story about my daughter and I. He says, I remember I was outside, it was a summer evening, and I was sitting on my porch, and it was 5 or 6 steps going down to the front yard, and she's 6, 7, 8 years old, and she's playing out in the yard, and I remember I must have been stressed about something, and I was sitting on the steps with probably my head in my hands, and she just could tell something was not right. And she walks up to me, she kneels down, reaches into the little landscape bed and grabs this little pebble, and she gestures for me to open my hand up, and I open it up. She places the stone in my hand, she closes my fingers and looks me in the face and says, Daddy, I can tell, something's wrong or you're feeling stressed. Just know that I love you and that you always have a smile if you think of me and rub this stone. And he stops and he holds that stone up and he says, I've carried this stone in my pocket for the last 8 years. And everybody's just floored. How did we know this person? Been around with us so long, has got this secret little story of really impactful thing that he brought to share with us. And he was vulnerable and shared that. The last one I'll share, and again, there were 20 people that shared, and we went on for a couple of hours, and every single one of them was powerful, and in many cases, it brought tears to the eyes of the participants. The last person holds up an old mesh farm hat. I think it said International Harvester on it or something, and he says, this is my dad's hat, and this is my item of significance. He said, so the story goes like this. He says, my mom died several years before my dad, and inevitably the day came where I got a call my dad passed away, and I was saddened and going through all these emotions and loss, and all of a sudden I get a call about 2 hours after my dad had passed, and it's the neighbor to my dad saying, hey, I'm so sorry to hear about your dad passing, but I see there's some people, your brothers and sisters are pulled up to his house, and they've got the trunks open, they're loading stuff, carrying stuff. Can I help? Is there anything I can do? And he said, well, that's strange. I don't know what that could be about. So he hangs up the phone, he drives over to Dad's house, he walks in and he finds his siblings basically ransacking the house and taking all the things that they want from Dad and Mom's house and loading it into the car. And he is just beside himself. He's livid with anger. He's saddened by the way his brothers and sisters are treating the loss of their dad. Like his dad's not even cold yet, and they're doing this. He says, I glanced over at a coat rack, and on there is hanging this hat. He says, I picked that hat up. I remembered as a young boy getting driven around on his tractor. This hat was probably 30 or 40 years old, and I had these fond memories. And then I looked over at my siblings in disgust, and I said, this is all I need. He says, I walked out of there, and I haven't talked to my siblings since. So this incredible space that we held for these people to tell the story was so powerful. And my lesson learned on this was the next day we met in the morning for about 4 hours, but at noon, I watched 2 of these guys as they were leaving to head back to their job sites, hugging each other, and they said, I love you. I've got your back. Thank you so much for honoring us with your story. And it wasn't this high five, fist bump, don't ever share, I'll kill you if you ever say anything. It was, I got your back. I'm here for you. And our people have never been the same since they did something like that. So imagine if you have that level of relationship with your employees, all the different elements of how they show up for each other when they're working and how they show up for the company that is able to put them in environments like that. So another lesson we learned moving on from retreats is how do we enjoy each of our weeks as we're together as a work family. And during the recession, we realized that there was a lot of negativity. Things were tough, but we said we always have something to be grateful for. So we have a weekly standing 9 o'clock Savoring Our Successes meeting. All hands meeting, everybody in the office shows up. We first share about the personal successes that we have, and then we talk about the great things that are happening with the company. And it's just an opportunity for us to savor for a moment the cool things that are going on and have gratitude. People look forward to Fridays. We bring some food in. We have a really good time. We connect as individuals. We connect as our family members to each other's families. And here we are in a much better place when we leave that at 9:20 or 9:30 that day. And we're able to get people to share, the board that we have behind the person that's standing here is the 4 different quarters. We have a magnetic board. People bring in pictures of things like ultrasounds and 5Ks that they've run, and kids that graduate from high school or whatever. This particular young baby, Nolan, was born, and the mother was with us for about a year, Tara, and she had recently been married. She left for maternity leave, came back 12 weeks later. Baby Nolan's at home. She gets about a week into work, and she gets a call and finds out that her baby has been diagnosed with cancer. And so our employees were amazing at how they handled that, because they basically took this horrific moment and they rallied around her. And it didn't matter that she was just an admin or only here for a year. They rallied around, and without any conversation with HR or with any of our leadership, our employees went around and started to look for people to volunteer vacation days to help her to be able to stay home with Nolan and help him through some of these most trying times and still have a paycheck, so that her and her husband didn't have to worry about the loss of money. Within 3 days, they had 71 vacation days that were donated to the cause. So we were just blown away. And some of those 71 days were donated by execs who maybe their vacation day was worth 5 of Tara's vacation days. So she ended up with, I don't know, something like 4 months, more than that, 6 months of pay that were supported by the employees. So how do we handle, these good and bad times is all about kind of the culture of the company. So we also said, there's a lot to do with how do you spread this kind of culture outside the company too? How do you create meaningful connection? And again, as a contractor, we started realizing that a great deal of the success of our company is based on these, what you would all call subcontractors, the drywallers, the electricians, the painters, who do 90% of the work on our jobs. I came in one year after New Year's Eve or after New Year's Day, and I said, I'm going to push for a corporate New Year's resolution. And I said, we're going to show up differently for our trade partners. We're going to treat them like they're one of our own, and it's going to start with not calling them subcontractors anymore, because I thought sub is below, beneath, submissive, less than. And so we put this clear box in the boardroom. There's a slot on the top. We put a label on there, trade contractor square box. And we said that anytime somebody uses the word subcontractor going forward, they have to put $1 in the box. And it was amazing. Like within 3 months, that word was banished, and we started referring to our partners as trade contractors or trade partners. The whole community in West Michigan today is starting to use that. Our competition, the trade contractors themselves, even people like lawyers and architects have now changed their language, because we started this movement of respecting the outside just as much as we respected the inside. As we started to realize the power of that connection within our own walls, we realized that each of these trade partners have these employees and the same challenges we have as businesses. And as Janet had talked about these peer groups that Best and Brightest does, we are doing similar. We're doing contractor roundtables where we invite in people that have, like an electrician, a plumber, a drywaller, a concrete contractor, and we have meetings with them today that are just like a business roundtable, where we all throw out all of our challenges. We talk about personal obstacles, personal goals, things that are happening in our lives of business, challenges that we have. And when our trade partners leave these roundtables, they are giving us incredible feedback. Like, there isn't another contractor like you guys. The way that you care about us, the way that you open up your kimono to us, the way that we can really share at a deep, meaningful level, it's allowed them to put us right at the top of their preferred vendors, or as a preferred vendor. They're today saving room for us, all because we're treating them like we're treating our own employees, and they love this. We talk about how do we show up unmistakably different in our communities. We're fresh off the last Super Bowl, go Patriots for those who are rooting for Brady and Associates. But we started looking at, we want to be a generous company. We do a lot in our communities with whether it's sweat equity or writing checks or prayers or whatever it is. but we thought we can do this differently. And in the case of the Super Bowl, we ended up creating this Super Bowl square pool for nonprofits. We literally picked out 20 nonprofits that are, a big deal to our employees. We gave them each 5 squares, and we put $5,000 into the pool. And as the quarters went by, you have all these nonprofit executive directors, you've got the boards of the nonprofits, you've got the employees of the nonprofits, you got our own people holding these square sheets going, I hope the Red Cross wins, or I hope, an extra field goal and Boys and Girls Club gets, $1,000. And it was just like this incredible way that we figured somewhere between 500 and 700 people got to participate in the excitement of us donating money. So I go, this idea of being a commodity donor to the causes doesn't have to be that way. Even when it comes to putting the right brain into how we manage safety. So you can imagine safety in construction is really important, and you'll see on the slide these danger signs. It's warning, must wear a hard hat, must have safety glasses, all these things. And you see those when you go by job sites. But we said that is not what is the intrinsic motivator for our employees. So we came up with this idea of a coloring contest. We said, let's send this blank sheet of paper home with the employees to the younger children of our employees. And this blank sheet of paper, it's said on the top, I love when my mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, or whatever comes home safe because. And they had to write a little sentence and then draw a drawing. And so this particular one from Maddie Genema, whose dad's name is Dan, she said, I love when he comes home because then we can eat donuts together and snuggle. And so today, if you look in our job site trailer, you have a different feel because right next to the door there might be a mandatory hard hat sign, but then there's this drawing like this from Dan's daughter, Maddie. And if you imagine me walking out on a job site today and saying, and I see Dan without a hard hat on, I'll say 3 words, Dan, I'll say, Maddie, donuts, snuggle. And he'll go, oh crap. And he'll immediately grab his hard hat and put it on. It's no longer, OSHA's here, let's not get in trouble and get a fine. It's, I'm doing this for the right reasons. So we've put the right brain into all these elements when you look at them. Extremely, extremely powerful. I'm a huge fan of third-party validations, and all of us have this benefit of this fantastic Best and Brightest program. So a number of years ago when we started, we had this idea of we want to be best of the best. And I thought, this is crazy because we know there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of applicants just trying to get on this 100 list or 125 or whatever the number is. And we said, well, let's begin with looking for elite status. And we said the only way we're going to get elite status is if we really intentionally focus on all the different categories. So we built small committees that were manned by people from all over the organization that focused on each one of the criteria of Best and Brightest. We did the same thing with another third-party validator, and that's through the Michigan Contractor of the Year award process, which is done by the Trade Contractor Association. And you can see that they have, say, 10 different criteria by which they rank the best contractors in Michigan. Well, since that program, we've been in the top 3 every year. We've won it twice. So Michigan Contractor of the Year, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of contractors in Michigan, and little E&V in Grand Rapids, Michigan is showing up for that. E&V has got 24 times the safety record of the rest of the industry. We've got almost 12 years of no lost time accidents because of things like the coloring contest. So I challenge people, what is your driver for Best and Brightest? What other criteria do you have in other industries? If you are a contractor like me, we're working with architects to determine if there was an award to be given to favorite contractor, what would your criteria be, Mr. and Mrs. Architects? And I think you have opportunities to do that. So after this 11 years, 9 elite awards, we've hit the national every year. We're so proud of that. But the biggest thing, the biggest accomplishment was it took us 10 years to get best of the best in our West Michigan program. And that felt so good because we've worked so hard for that. So I challenge everybody, again, what is your criteria outside of Best and Brightest? But take it really seriously because it's not about a little glass trophy that sits on a shelf. It's about the transformational process that your company can have as a result of folks like Best and Brightest program, or for me, the Contractor of the Year. So I'm going to keep going here. We've got about maybe another 10 minutes or so of things I want to share. And I'm going to show a couple of tools that we've come up with that have made a big impact on our success. So 4 of them are our onboarding program, which we've labeled Blueprint for Success, our talent sieve, how we run people through, how they know exactly where they are in the status of how they're viewed with the company. I don't have much time for that, so I'm going to probably skip that. If people are interested, they can reach out later. We have a program that is about building your core, your culture, this idea of a ripped six-pack ab organization, that we are so incredibly strong and ripped at the core. And then the last one is U-mapping. So I'm going to start with our blueprinting for success. And really that initiative was all about changing the way that we onboard people. So you can see this evolutionary picture that most people are familiar with, and we were in an ape-like stage when we first started. So it was all about, here's the SOP, welcome aboard, new employee. You're either going to sit with a group of people, we're going to go through the SOP, or we're going to give you the manual and we're going to show you your office and give you a whole day or whatever to read it and then tell us what your questions are, or we're going to make it hip and, we're going to make it 2001, we're going to put it on the computer so you can sit at your computer and look at it. And we realized that we were missing out big time. We said, the evolution, the next stage was checklists. Like, what were the things we were forgetting? And so we looked at something as simple as, like, when a new college graduate comes and joins us, one of the things they really want is a business card. And so we're like, okay, we can't forget all these little things. So you look at all these different elements and then who's responsible for it so that their first day, it's all there and it's taken care of. We felt good about that, but we still knew there was room to progress. So we said, let's join the buddy system. Let's pair them with somebody within the company. So we had this idea of putting one of our existing employees in charge of another human, as we said. We're going to have you as a babysitter, as a mentor, as somebody that could be the Yoda to answer their questions. And what we realize is the buddy is often not there. The buddy often isn't the expert in any particular area. So we really had to move forward with the next evolution, and that was this idea of it takes a village to onboard a person. And so if you've ever been at a concert and you've seen this phenomenon called crowd surfing, it's when an entertainer has got everybody standing in the audience and they can jump to their back into the crowd's hands and the crowd holds them up. And they're crowd surfing, and the crowd is now holding the weight of this employee as they pass hand over hand over hand all the way through the crowd and back to the stage where they stand them back up. And we thought, what if we could do the same thing with the onboarding of a new employee? What if it was about a new way of connecting people? So we created this idea of a successful blueprint to onboarding. And so what we've done today is, and I'm going to use an example as a project manager that comes into our office, they need to learn about 30 different core elements of our business in fairly short order. And what we've done is we've said within our organization, there's at least 2 people who are experts at these 30 different modules of information, and we want them to be responsible as subject matter experts to own that training module, to make connection with that person, to create an experience for that employee as they meet each of these 30 subject matter experts, and they go around over a period of, say, 1, 2, or 3 weeks learning what the company's all about. And so we've been able to completely change the connectedness of the employee to, say, 30 people, but also now when they need to know something about boardroom technology and how to use that, they know exactly who to go to. They don't have their buddy who maybe is, Jan and I were talking earlier about, they always put the older people in charge of technology and we struggle through it. Now we have the right people in the right seat on the bus. So going into this idea of, on the y-axis is anxiety, that each of our employees as they start their first day is very similar to the parent who's going to put their child on the bus going to preschool or kindergarten. And we got to remove the anxiety. So we have all these touch points along the way, including something as simple as, has somebody written a letter home to the family, to the spouse of the new employee? Because the spouse is a big part of making the decision to join our company. So it's all these little elements that happen through the course of that first week that we believe by the time they get to Friday and they're in our Savoring Our Success meeting, that they are truly all in and that they're going nowhere. There is no second thought about should I have left this other company for this new opportunity. So moving into managing your cultural fitness, again, I mentioned, kind of gave you a preview of this idea of a ripped core. A really solid core to your business is what I consider culture. And so we landed on this acronym of ABS, being artifacts, beliefs, and stories that drive your cultural ripped core. And so in our office, we're huge on artifacts. If you go all the way, anyway, through our office, you'll see all these incredible stories that are about the success of our company. And I could tell you stories for a long time and all the things, but you can see in the one main picture, Michigan Contractor Year. That is a huge story of how long and how hard we work to get there. And so when new employees, when family members of employees come, we can share these artifacts, and it just enriches the physical atmosphere. We look at our belief system, this idea of our people supporting Tara and her baby Nolan by getting all the vacation days she needed to take care of her baby. For us to believe that our trade partners are not subcontractors, they are not beneath us, they're above us. Are there stories or beliefs within your company that everybody understands and they proudly tell to their friends and family? And the final, the S of ABS, is stories. We have dozens and dozens and dozens of stories, which if you're so inclined to read the book, Become Unmistakable, we put together, that is the way we told our story, or the lessons learned is through all of our stories and all the anecdotal things that prove out what our belief systems are. So another tool moving into meaningful connection for us was a product that we created that we've been using for a number of years that then became pushed outside of our organization, and a lot of people wanted to start using it. So we created software around it, but it was called U-mapping. And this is a familiar slide from earlier in the presentation of this left and right brain. And we said there's a left side element of what the employee needs to know we need from them, from the company needs from them, like top responsibilities, professional goal setting, development, and coaching. And then there's the right side of the human. What are their superpowers at home and at work? Who are the important people in their lives? What are their personal goals and all these things? So we literally were able to start to map out the individual's journey to say what's important to us and to them, so that we have this individual map that allows them to have a unique experience within the company and for us to really care about them. And the software we created was really simple to drive discussion between the manager and the employee, to drive an awareness of who they are, what our expectations are, what are the things that something like a receptionist can do to help extend our strategic plan. And so we found this, and this is an example of my UMAP. This is what everybody in our company, now others outside of our company, are using to make meaningful connection. And if you look at the different aspects of the Best and Brightest program, all of those issues start to get addressed within this. How are we handling community initiatives? Well, that can be listed under professional or personal goals. How our people show up. We know that not everybody dives right into going deep, and that some want to be, gently entering this idea of vulnerability. And so we have different versions of the UMAP, very heavy left brain oriented. So you see 6 tiles of corporate information and just a little bit about people. But the important thing we learned is it works, and it works really well. A lot of you may be familiar with Fifth Third Bank. They're very active in Michigan market. Tom Welch is the regional president for Fifth Third in West Michigan. His leadership team is now looking at this U-mapping as a different way to connect in a meaningful way. We did a presentation to 125 of his clients, and after he introduced himself through U-mapping, he had people coming up to him for the first time, not scared and frightened of him, but actually wanting to engage with him. Just a huge opportunity to connect in a different way. From the U-mapping is just an exercise. When we learned about people's personal goals, we found out one year that a bunch of people wanted to get wills done, and there were 6 or 7 of them, and I said, why aren't you getting your will done? And people said, well, it's kind of scary, I don't want to think about death, it's expensive, I don't know where to go. And so I called our corporate attorney and I said, hey, if I wanted to send some people your way, what would it cost me to get that done? He goes, Basic will, $250. I said, all right, we'll be ready. I'm going to send some people your way. I reached out and said, the company will cover this for you. You've got 60 days, go make it happen. And they were so thankful. Their spouses were so thankful. Literally, the company was able to, through UMapping, understand needs of the employee and their family, and we are now the heroes to their family for helping them begin their journey of estate planning. And what a wonderful story, again, part of the ABS that we have to tell. So this is a familiar slide to you, but we added this minus 10 days. 10 days before a person even starts, we're building the UMAP. 10 days before we start, they know exactly what their responsibilities are and how they're going to show up for work, and they've developed their whole personal side that on day one we now use the UMapping to introduce our employees. And then the UMAPs are used by our subject matter experts to introduce themselves as they're going through their training. So we've got an incredible connection. So I'm going to quickly go through one final story, and it is a lesson that I learned. I was on a retreat in Mobile, Alabama, and I was with actually 9 other contractors, and we're in kind of a roundtable group together through Young Presidents Organization, and we had lunch at this place called Winsel's Oyster Bar, and inside are all these really cool quotes that this Mr. Winsel had said over the years, and the employees just would laugh out loud, and they'd write them down, they'd put them on the walls, and while we ate, we were reading these and having a great time, and as I left, on the outside of the wall was this big billboard. It was like 3 by 6 foot, and it was this passionate understanding by Mr. Winsel of what his town owed him as a citizen and what as a citizen he owned his town. And I don't want to spend a lot of time having you read this, but it was really written in kind of an old school cadence, and it had a really interesting feel to it. And I thought, this is really cool. I snapped a picture, and about a week or two later, I had a retreat with our leadership council of about 20 people, and I split them up into 2 or 3 people each, and I sent them off, and I said, using this my town story kind of cadence, if you were to fill in the blank about what does my company mean to you, what does that look like? And they came back about an hour later, each of these groups of 2 or 3 people, and they wrote out the descriptions, and I literally got misty-eyed, teary-eyed, really emotional because I was so incredibly blown away by their pride in their company and what they said they owed this company for what we've done for them and vice versa. And it was just really powerful, and it ended up being our company creed, which you can actually see on our landing page of the Elzinga and Volkers website. So I'm going to share with you this creed, which is about a minute and 25 seconds long, to give you a flavor of what our people feel like today with our company.
My company is the place where my talents are allowed to shine.
Where my work family is located.
And where my vote has impact.
It's where my life is enriched.
Where my children aspire to work.
And where my neighbors wish they could be. It is a second home for me.
It is a second home for me.
My company has a right to my loyalty.
And a right to my dedication.
My company supports me, and I support it.
My company wants my name.
My name.
Not my number.
My creative ideas.
Not my blind obedience.
My best efforts.
Not my minimum requirements.
And my safety.
And my safety.
Not just my productivity.
My company supplies me with a sense of pride.
Inspiration to advance my career.
The flexibility to be there for my kids.
Empowerment to make change happen.
Continuous training and growth opportunities.
Security for my family.
And the challenge to be like no other.
My company has some things better than others.
The best things I should seek to reinforce.
And the worst things I should help to rebuild.
Take it all in.
Take it all in.
It is my company.
It is my company.
And it is unmistakably
E&V.
So hopefully you can get kind of a feel for how our people feel. There was no PR firm involved, our marketing department wasn't involved. We took the language that our individual people, these teams of people wrote, we put it into a formal final version of our employee creed, company creed, and then we hired a videographer to film that for us. Well, what a wonderful experience that's been. So call to action for all of you. Are you a company that's living in Kansas, black and white, or are you ready to journey down the yellow brick road to the Emerald City in Oz? Do you know that there is a toggle switch that we need to force or push, rather, people to start bringing right brain to work? Can you be an oddity company with in how you treat your people and in all that you do, so that you can win the war for talent and crush your competition? And then the last one, connect deeply with your people from day one, or for us, day -10 before they even come, we're connecting deeply. So the last slide is just a reminder back to the Wizard of Oz as she's getting ready to leave Munchkin Land or the Emerald City, and she's saying goodbye to the Tin Man and the Scarecrow, or the Lion, and then gets to the Scarecrow last, and she hugs him, kisses him on the cheek, and says, "I think I'll miss you most of all." I want that to be me. I want me to be the Scarecrow, and that my employee, when they retire, is just going to go, "This went too fast. I'm going to miss you. I'm going to miss everybody here, and I'm so glad that I had this journey with you folks." So that's how we're wired today. And with that, I want, if people need the slides, here's the contact information, so you can contact Morgan W. at becomeunmistakable.com. And if there's any more information that you need, or if you're interested in the U-mapping, that is commercially available too as well, so myumap.com. With that, thank you so much. I'm happy to take questions. So Janet, do you want to come back on and take us home?
Hi, thanks so much, Mike. This was incredible. And I have to say that you made me tear up a couple times
awesome.
there. It was an incredible presentation, and congratulations to your company for doing unmistakable things, or inspirational things, I should say.
Does any of that sound like work to you?
No.
Did it sound like work?
Not at all.
And that's what I'm here to tell you, is this is a blast. My wife's like, "You're never going to retire, are you?" I'm like, "Nope, not at this, not when life's like this."
This is wonderful. All of the questions that we have are, how do I get a copy of this? And to let everybody know, this is recorded. It will be on the Best and Brightest website, and I will make sure you have a link to it in your email that you'll receive from me with an evaluation, and that's where you'll get your continuing ed credit. If you want the slides directly, email Morgan W. at becomeunmistakable.com. So I'm going to end with our link to the peer group slide. And Mike, I have one little question. The only thing that made me groan while I was still teared up is, what did the payroll person say when they had to convert all those donated vacation hours?
Oh, that's funny. You know what? They were part of it, part of the, oh my gosh, this is incredible. Like that did not become a burden or a thorn in their side at all. That was their part of making this happen for Tara and Mike and baby Nolan.
And it wasn't work, it was labor of love.
It was, and that's what it was, because again, I think it's incredible that this wasn't about a person who had been around 20 years and was known and loved by everybody. It was a person who was around in I say a lower level yet very important position, who was only around for a year, who got this kind of support and love from everybody. So it's a matter of joy, and it's a great story that we've been able to tell. One of hundreds.
The final question is, how is baby Nolan now?
Baby Nolan has been doing very well. I'm glad that somebody asked. The cancer's been held at bay. He's had a couple of surgeries, and actually Tara is back. Tara's position here is called experience manager. So that's a whole nother story of having somebody in your company that is charged with putting a smile on the face of all your people on a daily basis. You want to talk about a really cool job. She gets to do that along with one other person in our company.
That is excellent. Well, thank you again so much. I just teared up again over baby Nolan. So thank you. Thank you for making us feel. I think that's probably the biggest lesson in my career, which has been a long one, is how does it make you feel? And if you have experienced managers that make your employees as well as your customers and your, I don't want to say subcontractor, your trade
partners.
Your, trade partners feel, that is excellent. So thank you for that. Again, I will be sending everyone an email for your evaluation, and that's how you'll receive your continuing ed credit. So thank you again very much, and to all of you who participated today. And that's the end. Bye-bye.
Have a great day, all.